Shalom, dearest friends. Good to be here. Good to be sharing together. Good to be growing together. I want to begin by asking the Chevra the important question that we're all here thinking about. We're all here to really answer in this world, which is, why are you here? What is your purpose in this world? Why were you created? I encourage people to think about that question. What is your purpose in life? So my dear friend Rabbi Ber Cohen would speak to people, and he had a custom of speaking to people that were at least 90 years old. And he did not necessarily tell them that they were included in a survey of people that were at least 90 years old. And he would ask them, what's the purpose of life? Do you believe in life after death? And what he noticed in the vast majority of people is they did not have a strong answer to that question. What they would ask themselves, or they would present, is they would say, well, I sure hope there is. I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much. And I think that's a startling point to think about, is that we should be thinking, is there life after this world? Is this what it's all about? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we're going to die? Is that all there is? This is something that's important for us to reflect upon, is what is the purpose of life? Does this life go on? And once I connect to the purpose, once I've identified the purpose in life, then I want to make all of that which I do in this world connected to that purpose. What is the purpose in life, and how can I connect to that purpose? We're here to live with purpose. But what is that purpose, my friends? What is the purpose of life? And once you could answer that question, then you could direct all of your resources, everything that you do, towards accomplishing that purpose, and to think and ensure that I'm living a life that's connected to that purpose. In the language of the Ramchal, the great Derech Hashem, the Mesilas Yesharim, is that we are connecting to purpose, and anything that's bringing me closer to that purpose, I want to run to, like a magnet that's attracted to that which is being magnetized towards. And anything which, God forbid, goes against that purpose, I want to run away from, like a building on fire. So remember that. If this is something that's bringing me closer to the purpose of life, I'm going to be attracted to it like a magnet. It should be so natural. I should be yearning and jumping towards fulfilling that purpose. And if something is against the purpose in life, then I'm running away from it like a building on fire. So I ask again, my friends, what is the purpose of life? Have you thought of that? Have you thought of why you're here, why God created you? It is for a specific reason. Have you thought about purpose? Have you connected to your purpose? Are you motivated and in tune with the purpose? And if you are, then feel the magnetism towards that purpose. And I hope through the course of today's learning, we could feel connected to the purpose, and we could magnetize ourselves towards that purpose. And I'll tell you, you don't have to go up a mountain to find somebody sitting in a hut to connect to the purpose. I'm going to now share with you the purpose has been given to us by the Mesilas Yesharim, by the Ramchal, which was considered by many to be one of the greatest human beings that ever walked this earth. The purpose is to connect to God. The purpose is to connect to God. And I want to make it even more refined, to have pleasure in that connection, to have pleasure in the connection with God. The purpose of life is lisanus al Hashem, lahenois meziv shchinasai, to connect to God, to have pleasure in that connection, to have the absolute pleasure in a connection with God. That is the purpose. Now, how do I experience that purpose? So the Torah lays out the ways that we could have the most purposeful, meaningful life. And as I heard also from my dear mentor and friend Rabbi Dov Cohen, that once you identify purpose, so then people always say, I want to live a meaningful life. I want a meaningful life. Well, define for me a meaningful life, my friends. Maybe you could write, what do you feel is living a meaningful life? What in your own words is living a meaningful life? Because in a few minutes, I want to give the definition of a meaningful life. People say, I want to live a meaningful life. I want to live a life of meaning. I want to live a life that I feel I made a difference, that I lived with meaning. So if people can share what they believe to right now, what is a meaningful life? What does it mean to live a meaningful life? Write to us. Share what you feel a meaningful life is. I want to now share that we have part 1 and we have part 2. Part 1 means, what is the purpose of life? Part 2 is a meaningful life. So if you identify the purpose of life, which is having pleasure in the connection to God. So now, do you know what a meaningful life is? A meaningful life is, am I doing something that's connecting me with the pleasure of a connection with God? If you're doing something that's connecting you to that, that's called meaningful. If you're not connecting to that, that's doing something which is not meaningful. In other words, a meaningful life means I'm connecting to the purpose of life. And if I'm doing something, maybe people could think about, what were you doing 1 hour ago? And I asked the Chevra here, 1 hour ago, were you doing something that was purposeful and meaningful? Well, let's plug it into our equation. If the purpose of life, as we mentioned already from the Ramchal, is connecting to God and having a pleasure in that connection. Well, let's think about all of you, my friends, 1 hour ago, were you connecting to that purpose? If you were, then 1 hour ago, you were living a meaningful life. I would propose right now, if right now you guys are all connecting to God, this very second, if you close your eyes, each one of us, and you ask yourself, am I connecting to God right now? I'm enjoying the connection with God. Then this moment is a meaningful moment. I'm living a meaningful life right now. If I am doing that, then I am living a meaningful life because I'm connecting to the purpose. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not living a meaningful life. I'm doing something which is outside of the meaning, outside of purpose. That's not a good thing. Now, do you know where things that come outside the meaning of life and outside the purpose of life come in? They only come in because there's something that God created called the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara means the evil inclination. Now, I don't want you to think of like evil as something that has to be, some devilish something or some bad guy. But evil is that which takes me away from the purpose of life, that which distracts me from the purpose of life. So let's simplify everything here, because I like things being in a very simple language. And I find that it's very important when we speak about things in a simple language, it really helps us to internalize the concepts. So the purpose of life is a connection with God. We were put here in this world by the creator, sustainer of heaven and earth, God, the creator, sustainer of heaven and earth. And God is creating us every single second. We say it every morning in our prayers, that God, you are renewing creation with goodness every single second. We are literally being renewed right now. And that's something more for a Kabbalistic discussion, that we're being created right now. You're creating me, God, for the purpose that I could connect to you, the ultimate purpose. And that is something that after 120 years, we will encounter in its absolute brilliance, is the ultimate unleashing and the ultimate revelation of an intimate connection with God. that connection will only be in so much that in this life we dedicated ourselves to that connection. We dedicated ourselves to meaning. So, what is the thing that makes something meaningful? Is that I am choosing you, God, as opposed to choosing something else. Let me ask you, my friends, is it meaningful when somebody gets married? What do you say? Is that a meaningful decision? The Chevra can all write either yes or no. Is that a meaningful decision to get married? What do you say? Yes or no? Is it meaningful to get married? Also, it's beautiful when Chevra write where they're writing from, where they're sharing from. It's always beautiful to see people from all over the world connecting to God. Is it meaningful? So I see yeses. I see not always. I see Otis is writing a marriage can go wrong. Yes. In our context, is getting married meaningful? So I want to say yes. I want to say yes. And I want to tell you why. Why is getting married a meaningful decision? Because what you're doing is you're essentially saying, I'm choosing you as opposed to all the others. That's meaningful. I'm saying that I want to have a relationship with you. I want something exclusive. I want something special in this relationship. Whereas I don't want to be open to everyone else. I want there to be something special and exclusive about this relationship. Yes, we believe that there's something called special when you choose something. When you choose something. So Otis is writing, what about marrying two people? Generally, we suggest to marry one, start with one, and build upon that. Even Otis, as you're suggesting, maybe two people. So even if we were to theorize the idea of two, well, it's two as opposed to everybody else. Even though I would highly suggest to have one and make that one meaningful. There's a famous joke that I like to tell over because it really cracks me up. And this joke was about a hippie boyfriend and a hippie girlfriend. And the hippie girlfriend goes over to the hippie boyfriend, and the hippie girlfriend says, you know, do you love me? And the hippie boyfriend says, of course I love you. I love everybody. Do you think that was the answer that the hippie girlfriend was looking to receive? What do you say? Do you think the hippie girlfriend was happy to receive an answer? Of course I love you. I love everybody. What do you say about that? Do you think that was the answer she was looking for? Or what the hippie girlfriend was looking for from the hippie boyfriend was that I love you because you're special to me. You're exclusive to me. I want to connect to you in an exclusive way. I know when we speak about this, then people think you're racist, bigoted, exclusivity. Well, it's not racist. It's not bigoted. It's none of the above. It's that we believe that there's something called something sacred. And that when you choose to marry someone, what you're saying is, I want to have exclusivity. I want to have something special in this relationship. And it's special that we could have an exclusive relationship. And it makes it special because you're choosing that relationship, my friends. You're choosing that relationship. How do people relate to this idea of it being special, exclusive? So Otis is writing again. You could still choose wrong. That's where I wanted to bring this back to, is that when you choose God, what makes that meaningful is that there were other things you could have chosen. So again, I ask, think about 1 hour ago. What were you doing? Were you doing meaningful things? Were you living in a meaningful way? Were you connecting to meaningful topics? Thank you, the electro-skeptic writing from Ukraine. It's very nice to have you. And all the other chevra that are writing from different places, from Louisiana, Mr. Aaron, Anon, thank you. It's so wonderful that people are here. So 1 hour ago, were you living a meaningful life? So we defined Rabbi Noach Weinberg of blessed memory would always speak about defining your terms. Let's define our terms. That meaningful life means connected to the purpose of life. We define the purpose of life as a connection to God and having pleasure in that connection. And therefore, if I were to ask you 1 hour ago, were you living a meaningful life? So now you could answer that question. Was 1 hour ago something that I was choosing God? And what makes it meaningful is because I'm choosing God as opposed to all other stuff. There's a lot of other things you could be choosing out there. You could have been choosing to watch some episode in Netflix. You could be choosing to catch up on whatever season you're up to in Lost. I don't know if that's still a show. Maybe people can tell me. I'm usually behind on my episodes of these things because I don't really start them to begin with. But I hear from the Chevra that these are very popular shows. Maybe someone could tell me, what's the most popular show that people are watching nowadays? I'm saying like the stuff that everybody's watching. Usually I get the Chevra to give me the latest content of what people are doing and people are watching. So whatever that is that meaningful? If it's meaningful, it means I'm connecting to God. And therefore, if it is meaningful, if you can convince me that watching an episode of Lost is meaningful for connecting you to God, then I would be interested in hearing your thought process on the matter. Now, one of the things that we like to speak about here is that we spoke about this yesterday, and this is something in Rabbi Nachman we've been speaking about, is that your voice matters, and that you having an opinion on a matter matters, and that you can defend your opinion, and you could present your opinion. So I would suggest if you think that watching an episode of Lost is meaningful, then defend that. Speak that out. Southern Sass is saying listening to biblical stories while lying on my couch. I think that could be very meaningful. If biblical stories are creating and arousing a connection to God, then yes, you're doing something meaningful, and therefore you're connected to the purpose of life. Okay, I thank Biz West for pointing out 1 hour ago, like most of the time, I was on autopilot. So if you're on autopilot, wouldn't it be something, I'm happy that you are learning Torah now and connecting, is that you are deciding now, instead of being on autopilot, that you want to learn Torah and you want to connect to meaning, because Torah is the ultimate connection to God. Torah is the way that God thinks. Torah is the way that God thinks. When you're in a relationship with somebody, when do you really have depth in the relationship? When you're in their mind, when you're thinking the way that God thinks. That is an ultimate connection, that's ultimate meaning, and that's purpose. And therefore, by connecting to God, you're connecting to ultimate meaning. And therefore, Southern Sass, the fact that you were listening to biblical stories, going into the mind of God, you're connecting to meaning. I hope that the biblical stories are from authentic sources. That would be very, very important. People can please write any questions that they have, and we want to hear your thoughts on the matter of, in this case, meaning and connection. So Russ is writing about Proverbs having a glad heart. Yes, King Solomon said, "Toiv leiv nishta tamid," is that a person should be glad of heart. So what does it mean to be glad of heart? Does glad of heart mean, and he's a jolly good fellow, and nobody can deny? Is that what it means? Like, oh, ho, 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 what a fine, he's a jolly good fellow. That's very nice. That could be Avis Reim v'Hadal Recha Kamoicha, that you're singing, you're saying nice words about another person. That's a very nice thing, to say nice words about another person. It could be, though, if he is a jolly good fellow in the bar, is in a place where there's not necessarily God consciousness happening around you. It could be that the benefit of singing "He's a Jolly Good Fellow" and making somebody else feel good, even though that individual act is a meaningful thing, to cheer somebody up. And there's a mitzvah, and there's a connection point about cheering somebody else. and that it's gladdening his heart, and your heart is gladdened. But if there's some music that's pumping on the background and that's not so holy, or there's people there that are not necessarily dressed in the most appropriate ways, then it may be detracting from the meaning of the entire situation. And therefore, greatly appreciating Russ speaking about the gladness of heart, but we always have to see things in a very holistic way. That's one of my favorite words, holistic, is that the holistic way to connect is that everything that I'm trying to do is the most holistic meaning. And that, yes, you might find meaning in a certain specific area, but try to ensure that all the points, that everything that you're involved in is as meaningful as possible. And meaning, we said, is connecting to purpose, and purpose is the pleasure of connecting to God. So we're going to now let the Chevra ask some of the questions of things that are on their heart about purpose and meaning. The electro-skeptic is asking how Christians distorted the Garden of Eden myth. Maybe you could share more about how they distorted in your thoughts and your opinion, and we can address that more head on. Linda Hill is saying, I'm learning the Noahide laws and connecting to Hashem. That is so meaningful, because God gave the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, which is a way for humanity to have meaning, which is the ultimate connection to God. Just so people know, Mendel, so wonderful to see you as always. I was actually supposed to be in Florida today, but I'm going back to Israel, and the trip did not work out. But I'm so appreciative of the Chevra in Florida that wanted to help make the trip possible. I have a tremendous love and appreciation in my heart for you. So thank you so much. A tremendous pleasure. And I'm looking forward to going down to Florida and connecting with the Chevra in Florida. And we miss you tremendously. Thank you. I would also suggest that people look up the whole picture podcast, where Mendel Mena is doing tremendous work of sharing consciousness for humanity. Maybe Mendel can write that in the group now, what the link to the YouTube is, to see someone who's trying to bring meaning into the world. The ultimate meaning is connecting to purpose, which is connecting to God, and thereby helping humanity connect in a language. And I would say that Mendel is a master at this, of helping people connect to God through meaningful ideas in a very relatable language, and much better than I can do. And I think Mendel really is part of the future of helping human beings connect to God in a meaningful way. And therefore, Mendel, if you could share that, that'd be wonderful. Electro-skeptic is saying, through Bina and Birur, you could stay in the garden. Yes, the idea is that we should stay in the Garden of Eden. That's an exceptionally important thing to do. The Garden of Eden is not just a physical location connected to the Holy Temple. The Garden of Eden is a place within that you could constantly be connected to. Here, seeing all the wonderful questions from our wonderful Chevra. So yes, I see Mendel. Will the Noahides have their own daily prayer service? Will there be an Amidah for people who want to start to follow the Ben Noah laws? So the answer is yes. There is a way that the Noahides can have their own services and connect to God. And I'm looking forward to seeing these groups, prayer groups, being together and connecting to God in those meaningful ways. So Nicholas, and maybe Nicholas, you could share where you're writing from. Bugf, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, and if I'm not, I'm sorry. Isn't the challenge always how to work in a Gentile global world whereby marketing requires an emphasis on image, surface, the body, the cult of personality seems necessary to conduct business now. So yes, we're in the world, but we shouldn't be scared of the world. We have to be in the world, but not get pulled by the throes of the animal world, and really to connect to the world in a meaningful way. That's the idea of, as we began with, is that meaning means that there's an option for choosing something else. I could have chose, going back to the beginning of our discussion, I could have chose, like when we talked about marriage, that marriage is meaningful because I'm choosing this wonderful girl, or I'm choosing to marry this wonderful man because I'm saying that you are special to me. I don't deny that other people are also special, but I'm saying that you're more special. And there's an exclusivity. And I'm choosing this person as opposed to others. And that's what makes it meaningful. So yes, Nicholas, when you go into the world, you have to make decisions and not run away from the world. But as you're engaging in worldly pursuits and business pursuits, you're not getting lost in the world, but rather you're choosing to bring Hashem's name into the world by being honest in business, conducting yourself in holy and positive ways. So Shalom is asking why we say Modeh Ani when we say morning Shema. So we say Modeh Ani because the essence of who we are, the essence of our core is that we are looking for connection. And the essence of our connection is to be grateful. Maybe everyone could write now one thing you're grateful for. Please do write something you are grateful for. Everybody write one thing. I'm going to write something. If everyone could share one thing that they're grateful for, what are you grateful for? Hey, Shalom, my friends. I think we're back. B'siyat d'Shai, I'm sorry for the delay in it. So we're speaking about meaning, speaking about purpose, speaking about being grateful. And this is what it's all about. How can I be grateful? How can I be grateful for so much? So here we are, and we're back now together. There in the wasteland, grateful for Sefer Torah given on Sinai, and Moshe taking time to grab some diaspora. Maybe explain what you mean by Moshe taking time to grab some diaspora. Oh, I'm sorry that it froze for people. So we have to warm back up. We don't want to be frozen. We want to be warm. We want to be warm. So Electroskeptic is writing from Ukraine. We're also bombed by idol worshippers, Amalekis. You mentioned the topic of Amalek, is that Amalek is essentially that energy that is trying to freeze. It's trying to freeze our hearts. And we want to make sure that we do not get frozen. And we have to work hard. Is that it says, this is important to remember, it says that when the Jewish nation was traveling through the desert, so it says that the Jewish nation was traveling through the desert and we were learning Torah. And then it said all of a sudden, Asher Karacha B'derech, that we were met by Amalek. Okay? Amalek was the nation that came to freeze us. Why were we frozen by Amalek? If you guys to write in one word what Amalek represents, what are your thoughts? What does Amalek represent? What does Amalek represent? So Amalek represents Asher Karcha, that everything is just chance. Everything has happened chance. Nothing is deeply meaningful. Everything is just chance. Everything is coincidence. That's Amalek. And this that we're fighting Amalek is that there's no coincidence. There's a coincidence. A ka, that Yud and a Hey are operating in the world, that God is operating in the world, that there's no happenstance, my friends, that God is operating in the world and God loves us. God is with us. So that would be important, that Amalek is the power of something freezing, and we want to be able to push back and warm things up. So Baron Wayson is writing about, I reserve talks with the AI and Hashem to dialogue about Tanakh and how it can be translated into my life like a digital rabbi. I open up all four corners of my tent and we discuss Emunah mostly. So that's a very beautiful thing. I would suggest really ensure that you're speaking to live human beings, because it's a very critical to know is that with all the abilities that AI has, it does not have a soul. And you want to speak to people with a soul to be able to really get to the root of Emunah, to get to the core root of Emunah. Southern Sath is mentioning that she had a near-death experience and had the opportunity to go home or stay here, pulled me out of idol worship. Yes, so critical is that everything that we're all about is about connection to God. And that's what it makes it meaningful, going back to our beginning, that there's meaning and there's purpose. Something which is meaningful is I'm connecting to the purpose. That it's so critical to know that meaning means that I'm making a decision because I could have chosen something else. And in this case, that you're making a decision that you're choosing God makes it meaningful as opposed to choosing the idols. So excellent. Stay in those decisions. And Ross is mentioning, after visualizing Daniel in the lion's den, bargaining with God and making an oath. So be careful with oaths. Oaths are a very, very important point to be careful of. But commit yourself. Commit yourself to God. Commit yourself to God. Commit yourself to God. Be careful of oaths, but be very much into the commitment. The commitment, because purpose and meaning. Purpose and meaning. Meaning means that something is connected to purpose. When something is meaningful, then it's connected to purpose. And meaning only means that I'm choosing this and I could have chosen something else. So you know that something is meaningful when you're choosing connection, you're choosing purpose, you're choosing connecting to God, then you know that it's something that's meaningful. So be aware of meaning is I am choosing connection to God as opposed to any other thing that I could be choosing. That's the core. That's the main point they wanted to deliver today. Is be connected to meaning. And meaning, like I heard it from Rabbi Dovber, meaning means I'm connecting to purpose. Purpose, as we spoke out, like the Ramchal teaches us, that you know that you're living the purpose of life, because the purpose of life is to have pleasure in a connection with God. Lehenois miziv shchinasai. And Abnoach Weinberg, of blessed memory, would speak about the 5 levels of pleasure based on a ber halacha, based on the Sefer HaChinuch, is that there's different levels of pleasure. The lowest level of pleasure is that I enjoy a good steak or a whiskey, if that's what your thing is. Higher level pleasures are pleasures of love, pleasures of good conversation, meaning. The highest level of pleasure is connection with God, that you're connected to purpose in its highest level is going to be the ultimate pleasure. How do you know that you're living a meaningful life? Meaningful means that I'm connecting to the purpose. And therefore, everybody should think, if 1 hour ago I was connecting to something that was not God, then I was doing something that was not meaningful. I was doing something that was very empty. But if you can say that an hour ago I was connecting to a relationship with God, then you could say that you're living a meaningful life. And the purpose is that all times to be living a meaningful life, that I'm connecting to the pleasure of the connection with God. Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to learning more. Wishing everyone much blessing, hatzlacha, and we should be zoiche to the binyan beis hamikdash with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu amen.